Fast decisions, they are not always the best ones. And for me, accuracy really, really matters on how you're going to make decisions inside of the workplace, inside of life, wherever you're at. You see, inside of some organizations, speed is actually praised when leaders execute on their decisions. But fast decisions that are built on assumptions, those they tend to accumulate into very expensive mistakes. And we're talking about when you're building an organization and you're hiring in new employees into the organization, and you have this HR model, this strategic staffing plan that's absolutely great, and you get 1,000 resumes in, and everybody seems like they have all the necessary competencies that fit your competency model so that these individuals can perform these tasks. You got that. And you're trying to move really, really fast so that you can move these individuals into the network so that you can start producing your products and your services. But when you sit there and you really look at it, it's like, how accurate is the information that I have so that I can make the appropriate hiring decision? That is really, really important. And that is just one crucial detail, because once you stick that individual into the workforce, you're expending a lot of money on your recruiting and all of the hiring process and the onboarding. And you may not have the luxury of having a simulation, a situational job training model that you could put that individual in to test if they are able to facilitate what they said is on their resume. So you may not have those necessary tools available to you. So you really have to be accurate at scale with your information, with your decision making process. So here are three habits that I use, three habits that I've cultivated over the decades on how I make my decisions. The very first one is, what do I know? Am I operating off of belief, or am I operating off of knowledge? And I call a spade a spade. I am just a real human being. It doesn't matter what my background is. I am still a very fallible human being. Just made a mistake right there. So when I sit there and I say, and I look at information inside of the workplace, I ask myself, is this my belief, or is this really what I know? Because if I'm asking that question right there, I'm stopping myself from making decisions based upon assumptions. And assumptions are very, very dangerous, because when I'm able to label my beliefs, that helps me to build decisions on a solid foundation rather than a false foundation. Number two, I'm actively looking for information that contradicts what I believe or either what I know. And that's the whole entire purpose of having a collective around you, or either having a staff when you're making these organizational decisions. I personally am always seeking disconfirming information. I want somebody to pull my beliefs or what I know apart. And I really learned this when I was in the military, and it was further solidified through my educational journey. Because if anybody is out there that wants to pursue a master's degree with a thesis track or either a PhD, you are literally going to get scrutinized on what you know. And that's perfectly fine, because what it does is it just builds up your resiliency and the confidence of what you know, and you know that you put in the necessary due diligence to look for that information. So that's number two, is always seek disconfirming evidence. So number three, when I sit there and I look at number three, this is very important. Priorities and emergencies. Inside of the workplace, everything's an emergency. Now, let's frame this and say that we are in a manufacturing line and we're manufacturing widgets for a electric car somewhere, okay? And so I'm looking down on the factory floor. I've got a computer that has totally gone awry and it's spitting out malicious code. And then my robots that are manufacturing my widgets, they are acting exceptionally erratic. I have an employee that panics and they spill some highly flammable fluid down onto the floor, and then out of nowhere, I get one of the robots start sparking. Now, what's the emergency there? Everything there is emergency, but there can only be one priority, and that priority is the robot that is spitting out the sparks. Because if I don't cut the electricity to that robot and it continues to pump out sparks where I got flammable fluid on the floor, now I've got a fire. Now I have a priority. My priority, I have a priority emergency. Everything in the workplace is an emergency, but you cannot handle every single emergency all at once. You have to be able to manage your systems, and you've got to be able to look at that one priority within your engagement area, and you have to say, what do I do next? Do I have the appropriate fire procedures in place? Is everybody trained on the fire procedures? Do I have the necessary equipment for the fire procedures? What about my phone lines? Do all my phone lines work? Do I have contact with the fire department and EMS? What is their emergency response time? Those are very important things when we start looking about what do you know and how are you making your decisions inside of the workplace. Because if you go in with assumptions and a belief, I believe everybody did their quarterly checks, or either I believe I have all the serviceable equipment, I believe that my employees are trained, that's going to bite you in the behind a little bit later on, because you have to be able to proceed with that evidence-based thinking, because at the end, that's what your job is as a leader. You have to know the procedures to the T. So here's the thing with knowing the difference between how you make your decisions based on beliefs or assumptions or either knowledge. You can get better at this. And the more you practice this, the more you research and you build your self-efficacy, it's so important. And if you have a decision that you've made recently based on an assumption, which turned out kind of bad, why don't you drop it in the comments below? If not, you know the deal. Email me and follow along Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Monday's all about the know, Wednesday's all about the be, and Friday's always about execution to do.